Welcome to Transforming Work with Sophie Wade, exploring the future of work. Find out what's going on in our multi-generational distributed organizations. With a new tech and talent focus, discover what you need to know to stay upskilled and relevant and ensure your business keeps its competitive edge.
Hi. This episode is about separating, but not disconnecting, workers and locations. To solve many of the issues that employers and employees have been facing with the need to co-locate people and physical plant to complete many operational tasks. With AI, we are now innovating away many of these issues, improving business outcomes, reducing talent acquisition obstacles, and also generating economic benefits with more remote working optionality and opportunities. I'm delighted to be speaking with Raj Choudhury, Lumry Family Associate Professor at Harvard Business School. Raj is a scholar of geography at work, talent, and innovation. He is also the author of hot-off-the-press new book, The World is Your Office: How Working from Anywhere Boosts Talent, Productivity, and Innovation. Hi, Raj. How are you?
I'm doing well, Sophie. How about you?
I am very well and very excited to be talking about so much of the research that you've done over many years. Starting at the beginning, you studied computer science and engineering, correct?
That's correct. Many, many years back.
Why did you choose that?
So the honest answer is we didn't have a choice growing up in India. You were expected to either become an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. I would have probably studied literature left to myself.
Okay.
I love to write poetry and I write songs as well.
Interesting. Okay. Oh my goodness. You told me that you're a musician. You have a band, right?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Oh, okay. So in the show notes, everybody, there's going to be some link to some music somewhere. And what kind of music is this band? This is very interesting.
Yes, I'm the singer-songwriter. I write in Bangla, which is my mother tongue.
Okay.
And I have an amazing group of people. They're all ex-Berklee College of Music.
Okay.
And they play the guitars and drums and the violin and all that.
So I'm now really looking forward to hearing this music. You became an engineer. You went to IBM and then McKinsey.
So after my engineering, I just worked for a year at IBM as an engineer, and then I did my MBA quickly.
Okay.
So I did my MBA in India, and then I became a consultant with McKinsey. I spent 5 years with McKinsey, and as a young person, that was wonderful. I got to travel to Russia, to the US, traveled across Southeast Asia, and then I did that for 5 years, and then I left McKinsey and I joined Microsoft, and I ran a business for them in Southeast Asia.
Why was that the choice you made? And then academia? Why were those the next steps in your journey?
Actually, very honestly, one of the reasons that attracted me to academia, two reasons. One, the academic independence to study what you want to study, which I truly value, but also the flexibility. And partly the fact that I was not getting any time to do poetry or music at either McKinsey or Microsoft.
Yeah, I can understand. Yes.
And then when I became a PhD student at Harvard, I actually really started digging in. I spent hours and days in the Lamont Library reading up poetry from all over the world.
So now we understand your focus, your dual focus. Fantastic. I'm loving how the story is going. Now, academia. Where did you focus initially? You are now, the long trajectory is that now you have this amazing title of being a scholar of geography, work, talent, and innovation. So what did you start by studying? There's a lot to do with innovation, talent movement, understanding managers, understanding all different aspects of work. Why was that where you first started?
Yeah, so it was kind of serendipitous, but I think the question that's turned out to be the dominant North Star in all of my research for the last 15 years has been, how do firms access distant talent? And the premise is that, talent is everywhere. It's in every country, in every city, every region. But firms are clustered in some locations. So Silicon Valley or Bangalore or Shanghai or London. And so the question that's motivated my research is, how does this match happen? How do firms get matched to distant talent? And where I started the research was actually thinking about migration. And I still
Yes.
see myself at the core as a migration scholar. So one of the solutions to match distant talent to firms is to move talent. So move the person from
Right.
India to Paris or India to Boston. And then the alternative, which has become my life now, is instead of moving the person, move the work. Let the person live where he, she, or they want to
Right.
live, and just move the work to where the person is. So that's what I call work from anywhere.
There was some research based on some of these migration clusters internally within India, moving into from sort of, I guess, rural or small towns and cities around bigger cities, bringing the work there, and then the migration that happened within. What were some of the positives and dysfunctions, I guess, of working in that way that then has caused you to say, well, no, the work should move, not the people?
Yeah. So for many years, I focused on both the benefits of moving people, but the challenges as well. So I'll mention two benefits. So one benefit, which I document in the study you talked about, was a firm could find underutilized talent in smaller cities or smaller towns. So this is a company that I studied, Infosys in India, and they had a stated policy of saying we will disproportionately hire from the smaller towns of India, not from the
Okay,
large cities like Bangalore. And
interesting.
what they were able to find there, what we document in the study, is the diamonds in the rough. They were able to find these really talented students who were not getting picked up by the multinationals, and they moved to Bangalore and became extremely productive with Infosys. The other study that you might find interesting is a study of the careers of the top Indian bureaucrats that I looked at. So these are the absolutely top creme de la creme of the bureaucracy in India.
Okay.
And what I find in that study is that the folks who were initially, for their first posting, sent to the most challenging parts of India, the
I see. Yes.
crime infested regions of India, they became the superstars in 10 years or 20 years. They progressed to the prime minister's office. And the mechanism there is, early in your life, if you move around, especially going to challenging places, you learn how to problem solve like a way that you will never do if you sit in New York or Boston or London all your life. So lots of benefits to moving around, but I can also talk about the challenges.
When I saw that research, it really made me think about something which is top of mind for me right now, which is the challenges of Gen Zs. They haven't been the same kind of challenging situations, but they have really been forced to deal with very different circumstances than generations before them. Do you think that there are possibilities that they will also be able to catch up? Because it seems that some of what they are suffering from or challenged by is sort of some missing connections, missing interactions. But they were digitally connected. They were sort of engaging to some degree. Yes, there were some educational deficits that many people suffered. Those challenging situations that they experienced, can some of those same benefits that you saw from that research help them later on?
This is a evergreen insight that moving around as a young person makes you, a better problem solver, gives you access to a whole new set of connections that you would have never had. Now, with the work from anywhere revolution, especially with all these countries offering visas for remote workers, the digital nomad visas. I
Right.
think it's a huge opportunity that this generation has that I didn't have growing up, or you didn't have, which is to travel around the world as a remote worker. And
Right.
I'm actually going to Madeira in Portugal in the month of May to visit one of the digital nomad hubs there, the village of digital nomads, where I'm presuming that, you go and spend a few months there and you're going to meet lots of interesting people and make new connections.
These younger folks they have these great choices now to be moving around in different places. Can those challenges from actually being separated and having to move back into, sort of back home to be working, can that be one of those work experiences, or do we now have to try and get them to be experiencing more things to sort of re-engage them? I'm wondering if this can be something that's beneficial.
Yeah, so here I would like to make a really important point. So, what I study, given that I'm a scholar of geography of work, where work gets done, I'm actually a proponent, and my entire research is focused on work from anywhere, which is not the same as work from home.
For
So,
sure.
work from anywhere is a work arrangement which lets the person choose which city, town, state, or even country they want to live in. But it doesn't mean that you have to work from home. So,
Sure.
one of the communities that I study, Tulsa in Oklahoma, they have an amazing co working space called 36 Degrees North. So, all the remote workers actually are in that space because it's got very good internet connectivity and great coffee. And so you're not
Which
sitting
is
at home.
key.
You're
Right.
not sitting at home. So I would say yes. I'm I think work from anywhere and choosing geography can really impact our lives positively. But for the sake of making connections for our psychological health, we need to also go out and meet people in person. And I'm a strong believer of in-person connections.
So in the Tulsa situation, they were doing it for specific benefits, trying to lure people to Tulsa. Looking at it from very much from the geographic working from anywhere talent solution point of view, what were some of the things that your research showed you as being the benefits of being able to capture the value of people who are coming in, and they of capturing the value of being in this new environment?
Yeah. So Tulsa is actually an embodiment of why work from anywhere is a win-win. It's a win for the person and it's win for society. So for the people, and we studied the Tulsa program very carefully,
Okay.
where we surveyed the folks moving into Tulsa, the remote workers moving into Tulsa, and we compared them to people who were also chosen by the program but did not move.
Okay.
And we compared these two groups before and after the people moving in moved in, right? So
Yeah.
we found that the benefit for the individual was cost of living. There was a
Okay.
tremendous amount of money that was saved, especially because of housing. So the housing cost in Tulsa is about a
Right.
fifth of the cost
Oh
of New
wow.
York or LA. And people could afford bigger homes, especially young families. The benefit to society in that case was now this is new tax dollars. This is
Right.
new consumption dollars. They are buying houses. They are investing in the local community in different ways. But also, critically, we found that these Tulsa remote participants were contributing more volunteering hours in the local community. And there were
Right.
two reasons for
Ah.
that. The first reason was they wanted to get attached to the new society they were living in. But also, it's easier to volunteer in Tulsa because a drive to the food bank or a drive to the high school is like 15 minutes, not like an hour. So I think the big picture implication connecting to the earlier conversation we were having is that work from anywhere is a solution to brain drain. That for decades we have seen young people leave smaller towns to come to New York or London or Dublin or Tokyo or Mumbai.
Right.
And now there's an opportunity to have talent flow back to the south of Italy, to the region in Spain which is called empty Spain, or
Oh.
these or the heartland of America. And there are 40 programs like Tulsa now in the US, more than 40 actually, in states like Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin. So I honestly feel that the debate on remote work should be about how work from anywhere helps the heartland of this country
Right.
uh, get talent from the coastal cities.
There were so many towns in the Midwest that a steel factory, whatever, was existed, the town built up around it, the steel factory left, and all the jobs that went with it. So I think that makes a very compelling argument. When you're thinking about working from anywhere, where a company may be, bringing everybody together and they're coming from anywhere, or it may be a company that is completely distributed and they have people who are connected, but working from anywhere around the world. And then, of course, there's everything in between. How do you try and help companies understand the principles, is the way I look at it, of being able to be successful as a working from anywhere company? What are some of the things that you found help CEOs, senior leaders, but also the managers be successful with distributed workers?
So I think it's a very simple prescription, actually. The first thing I would say is that the unit of analysis should always be the team. It should not be the person or the company.
Right.
So different teams should decide on two things which are critical. So the way I see work from anywhere is work from anywhere has to fit into a hybrid working arrangement. And why do I say that? Because the way I define hybrid, which is very different from how most people think about hybrid.
Okay.
The way I define hybrid is it's a mix of work from anywhere days and in-person days. And I see work from anywhere and in-person being equally important. Now, if you consider any team in any company, there are two decisions they need to make. The first decision is how frequently should they meet? Should they meet every week or once a month or once a quarter? So that's the frequency of meeting. And the other decision they need to make is the venue of meeting. Where should they meet? Should they meet at a downtown office? Should they meet at some offsite or somewhere in between? And if you have those two decisions made based on the kind of work the team is doing, the distribution of where people on the team are living, then you get three forms of hybrid. If you're meeting every week, I call that weekly hybrid.
Okay.
And in a weekly hybrid, you can't work from anywhere really, because you have to be in a commuting distance.
Sure.
But if you're deciding to meet once a month, then you could do a more regional work from anywhere. So you could live in Connecticut, but you can go down to the New York office or a New York Airbnb or a location once a month and spend a week with your team. And then if you're doing a quarterly hybrid, which is you're meeting once a quarter for a week or 2 weeks, then you can live anywhere nationally. You can live in Texas, but you fly down every quarter to wherever the team is. So I see those are the three menu options for hybrid. And I honestly feel that instead of telling the whole company that they need to do the same form of hybrid, every team should be left to its own devices to choose what works best for them.
Exactly. People have different situations, different family, different desires, different ways of working. Looking at that cadence, I think, really helps it simplify the questions and how a team wants to set it up. And it also takes the headache away from the most senior leader or the CEO to try and work it out. And I think really focusing in on the team becomes so important. You also look at how these models work. There are many different aspects of that. One aspect is from some research that you did that came out in March of 2020, which was called Do Managers Matter? And I'm very interested in that because in this technologically advanced world, and when we're thinking there's so much more AI, and we're having to really be much more thoughtful about how we work, what we work, designing work, giving AI more tasks, and really being much, much clearer about specific roles and tasks and assignments. Do managers matter as much?
I think they absolutely matter. And I think the way they should matter is in setting high-level policy, in motivating employees, but not really trying to monitor people 24/7. I think that's the wrong way to matter.
Right.
And I think one of the things I've argued is that in this work from anywhere world, a critical decision has to be how to measure performance of direct reports. And my argument has been that performance should only be measured based on the quality of work and nothing else. So how many days people work, how many hours they work, how many meetings they attend, how many times does the manager see their face, all of that is irrelevant. And that's not the way the manager should matter. The manager should really matter in setting the high level policy, setting the goals of the quarter, the month, and then really inspiring people to bring the best out and mentoring them and coaching them and acting as a problem solver. And the research you mentioned, it's actually a really interesting study of these government labs in India. And for many years, they were just pushing files, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And there was this really charismatic leader who came in the mid 90s and said, let me shake up this collection of 40 Indian government labs.
Okay.
And he did two things. He set a very bold aspiration of saying, we want to commercialize a part of our technology and generate revenue that helps sustain the labs. And I would say in today's, just a sidebar, given what's happening in the US and all over with the government pulling the rug on funding in many cases, I think self-sufficiency is becoming increasingly important. So that was happening in India back then.
Right.
And then this senior manager just did one more thing. He said, if a lab generates additional commercialization income, a part of it goes to the team.
Okay.
So that incentive mechanism had wonderful results. So I see that as the role of a manager. Instead of constantly monitoring people, are they working on their computers? Are the keystrokes happening at the time I want them to happen? I think that's really a wrong way to be a manager.
Holacracy is an extreme model. There are other models based on how you're thinking about geography and talent and all of these different things and how they're changing, that there is a new model which has fewer managers in it because people are more self-organizing and have better tools to be able to be more self-determining and independent as we move forward.
I think that's a fair thing to say. And the simple reason is when I think about the hierarchy, the critical measure that economists use is what they call span of control. How many people are you managing? Now, if you think about a traditional team, the team might have been distributed all over the country. So a sales team and the senior manager would have to travel from town to town, sitting down with people, doing their assessment, giving them coaching. But now a bunch of that can be done online. So that makes an argument of saying the span of control can increase dramatically. So instead of managing 5 people in 5 cities, now I could manage 8 people because I'm saving a bunch of time as manager not traveling. So yes, I think organizations can become leaner in that way because the span of control presumably can go up.
In the same vein, now that there are some very practical, logistical travel arrangements that people don't have to make and be using up time, what about the impact of technology? How are you already seeing AI changing how companies are organizing themselves and trying to update on a work design basis? We haven't been that thoughtful really about how we work. We were all in the same place, and then maybe distributed across different states and countries. But now we have to be that much more specific and deliberate and thoughtful about how we're working and what technology is doing and what it isn't. What are you seeing and research that you're working on to help discover some of these specifics?
This is a really interesting topic, Sophie, and I'm very excited and passionate about this. I have a stream of, and one of the benefits, I told you like why I had to study computer science as a young person. But one of the benefits is I did a course on AI back in 1997. So when AI was not cool. So I'm relearning my AI now. And so the research stream that I'm super excited about is what I'm calling AI helping create codified selves. So what the idea is that, with
Okay.
generative AI, we can create a bot, an individual personalized bot based
Mm-hmm.
on the the knowledge and the skills that we have codified through our emails, through our writing, through our blogs.
Okay.
So not the entire of us, but like whatever we have written about, you can create a bot based on that.
So
And
Raj.ai.
correct, and or
Okay.
Sophie.ai, correct. And the idea is that that's a really fundamental new thing, because what you're doing is you're separating the human capital from the person. So earlier, the human capital was
Oh,
attached to the person, but now the human capital is outside the person, which means that that human capital can be scaled in ways that we couldn't even imagine before. So I'll give you two examples. So one, if you create a Sophie bot or a Raj bot, that bot could now, at least conceptually, participate in 3 meetings at the same time. So you're
right.
scaling the human capital. It could time zones could become less relevant. Work-life balance becomes less relevant because the bot is not tired. It just can work all the time.
Right.
And then the most interesting thing is it leads to a bunch of, and we're writing all this up in a new paper that should be published later this year. The interesting thing is about the property rights. Then who owns that human capital? Who owns that bot? Does the employee own the bot, or does the employer own the human capital? And even if the employee leaves and joins a competitor, can the previous employer keep using his or her or their bot? So I think there's a whole bunch of questions that will be need to be answered. But I think the last thing I'll say is that for work from anywhere, this could be a tectonic shift, because now my bot
Right.
really can go across time and space in a way that I could never do.
Couple of different really important things in what you've said. One thing is that I know that in France, because of their IP laws, like my bot is mine, and if I change job, all my however many bots that I have, whatever they're doing, they all come with me. So that's one thing. So it'll be interesting to see, because different countries have very different laws about, the IP that's created within a company, who it actually belongs to. But obviously, from what you're saying, there's going to be a lot of concern. Well, if there are 3 Sophie Wades, goodness help us, if there are 3 Sophie Wades, because the Sophie Wade bot 1 and bot 2 may be slightly different, has that not replaced other people who would have been working instead of me? Now, if I can expand my capabilities and be bridging time zones, that's not taking anybody's job specifically. It does mean that we don't have to hire anybody else. It means companies can scale more. They can form data. There's going to be a net increase in 72 million jobs or 91 million jobs. There are always more jobs that are created than are taken away. AI may be different. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think in the foreseeable future, I don't think the bots will replace us, but the bots will be a great tool in the hands of the busiest managers. So we actually ran an experiment and we created a bot for Wade Foster. He's the CEO and the founder of Zapier.
Okay.
And so two things we find is that the bot does extremely well. It passes the Turing test. So in an experiment in Wade's own company, the employees of Zapier couldn't tell. They couldn't distinguish between the human
Oh,
Wade and the bot Wade.
okay.
So
All
that's,
right.
and the other thing we find is that though the bot did really well, the employees did not like the answers if they thought it was coming from a bot.
Oh,
And
okay.
their guess could have been incorrect, but it's their perception that if they perceive something coming from a bot, then they didn't like that answer, especially if that answer was something to do with Wade's personal life. So
Oh,
they didn't
okay.
like the bot answering super personal questions.
Okay.
And I think that suggests, at least to me, that these bots will not replace us in all kinds of communication. They might
Interesting.
replace us in or the CEOs can use the bot to answer very impersonal questions. Like every CEO writes a letter to the shareholders in the annual report. And
Right. Yeah.
we know that the CEO does not write that letter, someone does. And now
Mm.
the bot could write that. So that task will get automated. But I think
Right.
the CEO standing up in the Zoom room or the cafeteria and talking to employees, I don't think the bot will replace that, at least in the foreseeable future.
So let's go to this very human element because there's some great data. Please share that research because it's so interesting when people are thinking about how to be connecting with people, that personal connection, and how to understand what types of connections really make a difference.
Yeah, so I think, this has been a pet peeve of mine, that the debate really should not be about where the in-person should happen, whether it should happen in an office or an offsite or a suburb. I think
Right.
that's a really secondary, minor question, in my opinion. And there's no reason CEOs and investors, unless there are other incentives, should be protecting office buildings. It's just another building. I think the real question is, how do we make in-person experiences better? How do we make people connect at a much better level than that's happening today in person? And what this research showed us, we studied a offsite at Zapier. When Zapier employees went to this offsite, they made new connections, but the new connections were made within ethnic silos. And
Okay.
since that study, and this is something sociologists have called homophily, that
Okay.
we are attracted to people who are like us, the same gender or the same ethnicity or the same, other physical characteristics.
Right.
And since then, I've actually gone to a bunch of events, including to my kids' schools, and I've seen when people break out, they go and cluster in ways that are, siloed by gender and ethnicity. So this is a very strong, maybe unconscious bias that we need to be aware of. And so given that, the Zapier first finding that, people make new connections in ethnic silos, we then studied how to break that pattern. And we found that when two people traveled in the same taxi from the airport to the retreat, it didn't matter if they were from different ethnicities or genders, they made a connection. And
Right.
because if you're sitting in the back of a taxi, it doesn't matter if the person next to you is a different ethnicity or gender. It seems natural to start a conversation and then you make a connection. So we
Right.
call that engineering serendipity. And our argument has been, doesn't matter if the team is going to the office or going to an offsite or anything in between. The real question is, how do we engineer serendipity so that people are not having siloed conversations?
How one can be putting people together in a way that doesn't feel contrived, because a taxi does not feel contrived, it's convenient. And then you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I got to talk to this person. And then you open up and you share and you saw the tail end that really extended. Have you done research to show other ways that are particularly successful in engineering serendipity in different ways?
So one way, and I'm sure like there are other ways, and if your listeners or if you have ideas, I would love to hear them. But one study that I did was with a very, very hallowed investment bank, and you can probably guess who it is. And we ran this experiment of virtual water coolers. So the way we engineered serendipity there was to say that there was a group of interns. They were all
Okay.
working virtually that year. And then we paired them with extremely senior leaders at the bank that they would never see. And it was a randomly assigned half an hour conversation. And it was mandatory for both the leader and the, intern to join that conversation. And what we find is that even that half an hour conversation has a positive effect on the intern's performance rating. But there too, we find that the effect is stronger if the intern and the senior leader on the other side of the Zoom call had the same gender and the same ethnicity. So even there is homophily
Wow.
at play.
I think that's one of those things that can really help generate more of connections, because one of the things that Brian Elliott pointed out to me a couple of years ago when I interviewed him first was that if senior leaders are not in the spaces where there's activity, and they're in their office where there's no activity or it feels very empty, they feel there is no activity rather than they're not where the activity is. And so I love that, also helping put different people across levels and across age groups into different spaces to be experiencing them in different ways. Your new book is coming out April 22nd. It's about working from anywhere. Please just give us a little bit of an explanation of, one, why you wrote it. I think we've given some good explanation as to why that matters to you, but what the key elements are that you've really tried to communicate in this book, which I'm very excited to read.
No, thank you, Sophie, for mentioning that. So I'm super excited about the book. It's called The World is Your Office. And there are really three parts to the book. So the first part is about making the business case for why work from anywhere is a talent strategy that every company needs to think about. That work from anywhere helps you expand your labor market nationally or even globally. The second part then is about the messiness, all the challenges of work from anywhere, which I'm very honest about. Yes. And then I present a bunch of best practices that I've learned myself to mitigate those challenges. And I talk about how to make work from anywhere happen in a hybrid format. So the monthly and the quarterly hybrid formats that we talked about. And then the final section of the book is more futuristic. It's looking ahead. And it's essentially saying with AI and automation and digital twins, now it's possible to work from anywhere in a blue-collar setting for factory workers, for folks working in a hospital or a warehouse. And in a power plant or an energy rig. And so now this white-collar, blue-collar divide on work flexibility is going to get mitigated. And I think that is the part I'm excited personally most about.
We've talked about this before in person, about flexibility and how workplace flexibility, which should be available to everybody, no matter what kind of on-site or online or combination work that they're doing, but it doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be identical. You were sharing some really exciting news about digital twins and how that can offer different types of workplace flexibility for people who have had to be on site in the past.
This is the part I'm most excited about. So digital twins are a combination of sensors, AI, automation, and the cloud, where you can create a copy, a virtual replica of any physical operation. It could be a factory, it could be a warehouse, it could be a hospital ward, it could be an airport with all the conveyor belts. And then you see that operation on your computer in real time. And because you have AI sitting on the cloud, you can also run that operation virtually from far, far away. So most recently, I worked with a Turkish power generation company. They have power plants all over Turkey. And none of their engineers or technicians want to ideally live in those places because they're up in the mountains or in small villages. So what they've done is they've created a digital twin headquarters in Istanbul. And from the same room, they now operate all the power plants in Turkey. And all these folks are now living in Istanbul. I think it's really very cool. And there are digital twins now across almost every industry I've looked at. So the NHS in the UK is implementing virtual wards where doctors and nurses and patients come together virtually. Yeah, and I think the implication of digital twins is now you can work from anywhere, even if you are a blue-collar worker, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you are an airport employee. So I think it really is the next wave of work from anywhere.
And what that means, if I'm thinking about power plants and other types of situation like that, where there could be many remote locations where people just don't want to go, which has limited the possibilities for a power plant or other types of facility because people just won't go there, that now becomes possible because of what's been enabled. This is so exciting. Oh my goodness. I'm just, my brain is going off in all kinds of directions. Oh, that is absolutely fascinating. And we're just at the beginning of this, right?
That's right. Yes. The last thing I'll say is that I think, if you are a CEO or a leader listening in, you just cannot ignore work from anywhere, because this is the way you can attract and retain talent nationally or globally. So it's a talent strategy. It's not a work arrangement. And that's, I think, the message I keep telling myself every day.
Exactly. And the future of work, I always use the word messy. I love the fact that you said the messiness. There is so much messiness as we try and adapt to the future of work, because there's so many things that are changing, and location is a piece of it. It's an important piece of it, but it's not about being in the office. It's about allowing that flexibility and allowing people to be working where they work best. Raj, it's such a delight to hear about all this amazing research that you've done. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I'm very excited to be reading your new book very soon.
Thank you, Sophie, for having me. Yeah.
Thanks so much to Raj Choudhury, Associate Professor at Harvard Business School. You can find out more about Raj on LinkedIn, as well as go to HBS's website to review many of his very interesting research papers. You can also go to your favorite online and offline retailers to get his new book, The World is Your Office. Immediate action tip. Working from anywhere is the way to attract and retain talent, nationally and even globally. It is a talent strategy and not a work arrangement. If you are finding the new business and work environment hard to navigate, contact me for board advice, executive mentorship, courses, and workshops that enable multi-generational distributed leaders, managers, and teams a means to up-level and scale rapidly in the modern work environment and be ready for whatever lies ahead. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it and share it with a friend. You can also write a quick review wherever you watch or listen. For more useful articles, information, and research, please follow me on LinkedIn, and you can sign up for my Work in Progress newsletter on flexos.work. Thanks so much. See you next time.